Hello, everybody.
Welcome to another episode of the Alphawaves pod.
Welcome.
Episode 19.
Let's just not do
Almost
this again.
Almost at the double.
Oh, almost at episode 20.
Almost there.
We need to do something to celebrate that.
It's 20 like a landmark anywhere in the world.
Well, it's double digits, isn't it? Like, well, I guess they're all double digits, but it's double the double. Anyway, let's just move on. But
You always got to butcher my intros with the numbers. Anyway, today's episode is about forgiveness.
forgive me. But yeah.
Yeah, no, today's episode is about forgiveness. Just wanted to touch on it a bit.
Yeah.
How important is it to forgive in your life on a day-to-day basis, would you say?
On a day-to-day, you think I'm thinking about the people I
Possibly.
need to forgive daily?
Well, I'm not even trying to go that deep yet, just on the small things. Is there any, the small?
That's interesting, actually. I've never looked at it in terms of that, like the small things. Do you mean small annoying things like people who cut the queue and...
Yeah, small things.
Oh, essential, because getting annoyed about that, I'm only going to ruin my own day.
There's a lot, like the other day, I was just thinking about it. I can't remember where I was going. I was on the train though. And like, people are just do some weird things certain times, but then it's like...
Like what?
Excuse me.
Like
just
that?
just like, I get people have got places to go, yeah. But some of the things people do in a train station is just ridiculous. It's like, I just can't even think of an example off the top of my head. But even
Now I'm so curious.
it's just mad. It's just mad. Even like when you're driving and stuff, and you see people driving, and then they just cut in front, not necessarily of you. They cut in a lane, and they cut in another lane. You're like, just to get caught at the red light.
When I was driving, I'd just
all
be
the time?
chilling, watching them.
Oh, I
like,
thought you was the one that cuts in.
No. For what reason?
You never know.
We've
innit?
already established that I don't really care to be on time. So what am I going to be cutting in lanes for?
Anyway, take away the example side of it. I just mean on a day-to-day basis, there's small build-up of things that sometimes you just got to forgive people for being...
You do, but that doesn't mean you have to stop being assertive. So, for example, I got a treatment from this lady, and she has like her own small business, and she asked me to leave her a review, and I did because it was amazing. So I was like, great.
What kind of treatment?
Review. Huh? It was Reiki healing.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah. So it was amazing. And actually, in that session, she brought up forgiving people. So I was like, that's crazy. But yeah, so had the session. It was really amazing, blah, blah, blah. Left her a review. And then from me leaving my email in my review, she took it upon herself to add me to her email newsletter. And she was like, yeah, you should look forward to 2 emails, I think, a week. And I was like, that's too many. I didn't say I wanted to be on your email newsletter. And I find that really annoying if, one, you haven't checked to see if I even want to do that first, and 2, if the content isn't even
relatable to you.
Doing what I want it to do. Exactly. So yeah, but I forgave her. I was like, that's cool, you're just trying to promote your business. That's fair enough. But I did ask her, can you kindly remove me from that?
But you see in those instances, like for instance, when someone is doing something to benefit them, and it might not necessarily line up with what you think is morally correct, how easy is it to forgive people in those situations?
Quite easily, because I could see why. That, like, if it's something that benefits them, then I can understand why. But it definitely does make the water a bit bitter. Like, I'll look at you differently. If you'd asked me, like, oh, do you want to join the newsletter? I probably would have said yes.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't useful to me, just because I'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever.
So because they'd done it without asking.
Yeah, and then unsubscribe in my own time. But I was like, I'm not even going to make the effort to unsubscribe myself. You have to remove me just as quickly as you added me, because it's annoying. You can't just, I forgive you.
You ain't been back to her since.
I mean, that's a different story. The treatment was great, but it was a little bit overpriced. But so that's not really...
Oh, here we go.
That's not really the same. That's a different question for me.
Okay, fair enough.
But things like that, I don't know. That's the thing with me and forgiveness. And it's interesting because I've never actually looked at it in that way.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite good with forgiving the small things.
Okay.
I never used to be. They used to bother me a lot. But now I just, maybe it's even like an age thing or a season of life thing, but I just don't care.
I think that's what it comes down to.
You are a stranger.
When you don't care, it's easier to just
Yeah.
crack on. But saying that, there's people, in your life that I guess once you grow to know them, you're just kind of like, oh, that's just them. But does that make it okay for them? Like, there's people in your life that do certain things and you're like, you forgive them for it.
Now, see, that's really hard. I find that difficult. Like when it's very personal to me and close to my heart, I don't think I've actually forgiven anyone.
Really?
Not a single person.
That was going to be a question I had for you. But.
No, sometimes I feel like I have, but then I know that I haven't. If when you're doing something random and a random thought pops in your head or they pop into your head, and then in your head you're still willing to argue with them, and it could be anyone, like not just romantically, but even friends, and then that's how I know that I just have not forgiven them. And it's hard. Like I think forgiveness is an elusive key to success and happiness.
What makes you
and
say
I
that?
have not, because it's so freeing, like imagine on that small scale of being able to be quite unbothered by people and easily to forgive. If you can do that on a larger scale and just move on with life, I would love to be able to have a thought of someone. Oh, actually, I've forgiven maybe 2 people, but yeah, on a larger not really, but yeah, on a larger scale, if I was able to forgive, I think that would allow me to feel a lot more peaceful. And I find that really hard. So how do you forgive people?
Depends what they've done, to be honest. It has to come, it's circumstantial. It depends what they've done or said or whatever.
What's made you forgive people?
Peace, inner peace. Sometimes it's like,
But then how have you done it, like genuinely? Because I was just like, how do you, like, is there a process to forgiving people? Is there like a method? Because I truly don't know how to do it. And that's what I was thinking about this week. Like, how do you do it?
Again, like I said, it depends what they've done. There's some things that for me is unforgivable, but then there's other things that it's kind of like, I forgive you, but from a distance, if that makes sense. Like if you've done something,
like the people who are no longer in your life and you forgive them.
Yeah, kind of like that. Like I can think of a few people, and it's like, I know someone, basically, without putting names to stories, I know someone that was in a low place in life. I tried to help them out, and they just kind of moved a bit snaky, done something which I didn't agree with, and it's almost like, I get you was going through stuff, innit, and you was at a low, so this was like a super super opportune, like you was a bit too opportunist in that situation, where if you saw the long-term thing, you would have saw more that you could have got out of it than what you did. But I get you was going through stuff, innit? So I forgive you from a distance, but I don't want you around me no more, kind of thing. But it took me a while to get to that stage. Obviously, at first you go through the resentment side, the revenge side. Like you go through those stages, and then you kind of weigh it up, and sometimes time just plays on your side, because if I saw this person during those stages, maybe we would be at a place where there would be no forgiveness, because it might have been a back and forth. Luckily, we didn't see each other for a long time. And then when I did see the person, it's almost like so much time had passed and so much things have happened that we didn't even need to have a conversation. It was just like, we've gone our separate ways already. But by that point, I think I've already reached that point in my life where I don't care anymore. Like, it doesn't, at the time it affected me, but after time it doesn't affect me. So I think sometimes dealing with the matter at hand will help you forgive, and other situations, time. So it just depends on how bad it is, really.
But when you say forgiving someone at a distance, what does that mean to you specifically? Like, what does that look like?
It's almost like out of sight, out of mind, but without it being out of mind, if that
But
makes
how
sense.
do you know you've forgiven them? Like, for instance, does that mean that if you ever cross paths with them, it would be relatively peaceful, but you'd still want to say something? Or
Nah, I think so that I mean is like I said, there's stages. And once I've got out of my revenge or retribution stage, then it's pretty much
okay.
then it's pretty much like, not that I've forgiven necessarily, but I've moved on. And once I've moved on, I've basically forgiven. It depends. Like I said, it really depends on what the person has done. But
what about people who are still in your life that have done something that may not have even necessarily really super affected you, or you may have found a bit annoying or whatever, and you've still kept them in your life and you've put certain things down to, say, a personality trait or something? What about those situations where you kind of have to forgive a person for the way that they are?
Those ones are difficult because they could always do it again. Like if that's just the way you are, that person could always do it again. I think it's kind of growing acceptance to the fact that there's no malice behind what the person's doing.
I like that, acceptance, because even that I find hard. Like, even if there's no malice, I think and I don't like that I've realized this about me, but I think I can be a bit of a grudge holder, especially if I haven't said anything or like voiced it out, or I'll let things build up a little bit and then I'm like, now I kind of resent you. I find you too annoying for me to be around unless so much changes. That's something I'm really trying to work on. It's not easy when you're not used to, not even necessarily confrontation, but just saying something there and then.
But sometimes you've got to do it because that conversation will take away your assumptions. Because I've been in a situation where somebody was assuming that I had a problem with them. But my problem had nothing to do with them. It was other stuff in my life. But you was in my life at that point, so you was bearing the brunt of it. By no intention on my own. It was just my mood at that point. And it's only because they challenged me in a conversation that we was able to clear the air on that. Whereas, imagine they didn't ever say anything to me. They would have been going away thinking that I have a problem with them. So sometimes that conversation can almost clear the air for you as well.
Yeah.
And allow you to forgive someone for being the way they are at that period of time. But it's a difficult conversation because you don't know what's going to come of it. It might come with confrontation. It might not.
That's the thing. You're like, oh, how do I say this in the most well-received way? But you can't always guarantee that someone's going to receive it well. And that I sometimes find, what I'm learning is to ask more questions. So say if I've said something to someone and they've taken it in a different way, I would want to ask them, what are you hearing? Is it the same thing as what I'm telling you? Like, or are you hearing something from your wounds? Yeah. You know, because I don't know how you got to where you are right now. So walk me through that.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the hardest part of forgiving someone for you? Is it that point, that conversation, or is it just the?
I think. I mean, conversations, I'm getting better at it. I feel like my circle around me is a little bit easier to have those conversations with, and through practicing and doing it, it's become a bit easier. I think for me, saying stuff in the moment can always be a bit difficult. But the thing that I find difficult about forgiveness as a whole is probably all of it, because to forgive, you have to kind of go through what's hurt you with that person. And it's really hard when that person isn't understanding why they've hurt you. And also, if you aren't in a position to be able to talk to them anymore to get them to understand. But I heard this quote from this woman who was giving an interview, and she said something along the lines of, you don't need someone to apologize in order for you to move forward, because what difference does it make for them admitting that they hurt you to you like, what difference does that make to you? It doesn't take away your hurt. It doesn't lessen it. It doesn't remove what happened for them to know that they hurt you.
Yeah.
You don't need their permission to move forward, and kind of waiting on someone for an apology in order to move forward is like that.
I understand. It's true. It is true. But it's, I don't know. The thing with forgiveness, yeah, it comes with a lot of trauma. Like, there's a lot of trauma attached to it. And it's almost, like I said as well, it's circumstantial. Like, depends how bad what's happened has affected you. But do you think that you necessarily have to forgive people to move on and be like, find peace within you? Can you not forgive someone and still be peaceful?
What do you mean?
Because they say like sometimes forgiving someone is, like you said, is freeing. Like, it takes a weight off you. If you're unable to forgive someone, does it, like, do you necessarily feel you have to forgive someone to have that same freeing feeling?
Yeah, because if you haven't forgiven someone, it's like holding a concrete slab that doesn't belong to you, and that slab is hurt. And if you haven't forgiven someone, you're still holding on to that weight.
But then it's almost like you can't move past something without finding that peace within that situation. Because to me, there's some situations that there'll never be a forgiveness in life. There will never be a forgiveness. But does that mean that it now holds extra weight on me, or does it just mean it's one of those things in life that I just crack on with? If that makes sense.
Well, you tell me, like, when you think about those situations and those people, how do you feel about it? Like, when at this point now, like, do you feel like there's a weight there, or do you feel like you can move forward from it?
I don't, but then I know that if I'm put in a situation with them or with someone else, then those feelings will probably come straight back. Like, if I'm face to face with certain people, I haven't forgiven them for anything they've done, but I'm not actively looking for them, if that makes sense. I'm not looking out for them, looking to see what they're doing, looking where they are. But if one day we ran into each other, then I guess that'll be the test of where I am.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. And that's what I don't like either, where like all these loose strings, where it's like, if I run into you, I don't know how you're going to affect me.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling, because I do feel at peace with myself. Like, I don't have any lingering thoughts or any problems in my head or with anyone. Like, I feel like I don't have a problem with anyone in the world right now.
That's such a nice place to be.
But I don't know, am I kidding myself? Like, is it because I don't see these people, or is it because
Well, I think that's also a part of forgiveness. Like, I think sometimes there can be this preconception that forgiveness automatically lends to like this loving, accepting thing. And you can forgive people, but recognize that you are not anything good in my life. And I forgive you because I don't understand what made you what you are, but I understand that human beings aren't just born the way that they are. So something must have happened to you to make you like this. And that's not necessarily your fault, but that's definitely not my fault. So I'm not going to have you near me because you've revealed something that I don't want to have to experience.
But environments play a big part on why things happen, though.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you take yourself out of that environment, it's almost easier to forgive, because you're looking in and like you can see why things happen. Like, very much so.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just on a surface level, there's some things that's just, I don't know how people forgive. And
there are some things that are pretty unforgettable. Well, even small things that are like just rude things. Like, I had a friend around my house once who stayed over. She flossed her teeth in my room. I was looking at her like, you need to leave immediately. And since that day, we have not been the same. Well, they're not in my life. So, and that might be a small thing, but I was like, it is hard for me to not take that personally, for you to be that way in my space and think it's okay.
Something as small as that can alter your friendship.
I mean, obviously there were other things too, but that was like the tip of the, I was like, this is just too much now. Like,
what about with betrayal? Do you think you could ever find a place of forgiveness for betrayal?
I mean, did you see my whole face change? Obviously not. So, because
It's crazy because I was watching something, yeah, and it was about they were basically saying that, like I said, it's all environmental, yeah. So they were basically saying, like, in times of betrayal, forgiveness is a lot easier when you're in a position in life that's harder to give up with somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship, but if you want to take it to a relationship status, when somebody cheats on somebody, I don't even believe that is ever forgiven, because I've never met somebody that's been like stuck it out with the person and not still held resentment or brought it up here and there. But it's like, this thing was like two friends, and one of them, basically, long story short, they started working together. Something like one of them didn't read the contract or whatever, signed it off, whatever, but he didn't know he didn't have rights to the company. But the other person now has sold percentage of the company. Obviously he's taking his money, the other guy's not. I can't remember exactly his role in the company, but however it worked, his thing was, this guy's betrayed me, but I kind of have to forgive him, because if I walk away now, I'm going to be left with nothing. And in those situations where the other person's got leverage over you, it's like,
is that forgiveness?
Is that forgiveness, or is that just
playing the game and being strategic? Because I don't know, with betrayal, that's just a different thing for me, because for me to even trust someone in the first place, and that's friends and relationships, that's not easy for me to do, which is why I think it's so hard for me to forgive when it goes a different way. But I will say, like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm that person that when I have been betrayed in a relationship or by someone in that sense, that I've gone and never looked back and blah, blah, blah. I wish I could be that type of woman.
Yeah.
But in my head, if you've done something to betray my trust and like cross the line in a certain way, I might take you back in quotation marks, but it won't be in the same way. Like, now we will never be official again, and I will never take you seriously. And that's not exactly a healthy way to do things. But it definitely is unforgivable. Like, you can't go back to you know, how it was before.
So do you think, yeah, if you have forgiven somebody for something, that it erases, not, it doesn't erase the memory, because the memory stays, but your path with them can still go the same way it was before that? Friendship, anything. Say you had a friend and they was in a desperate time of need, yeah, and they stole something from your house. But
I'm not bringing any more friends to my house, man. It's just too much risk.
But you know that they was desperate, like they was in a desperate situation, but their pride wouldn't let them ask for it, but they had to do this as a means to survive. You've got to the bottom of it, you've hashed it out with each other.
What's there to hash out?
They've explained to you what their situation was.
No, because that's the thing. You can't have people around you who are willing to harm you when they're at their low point. That is not your friend.
100%.
I don't care what your story is. We've all been low, you know? And if you can't have integrity with someone who has been as real to you as they possibly could, I'm a pretty good friend, you know? You can vouch for that.
Yeah.
But so if, you know, like, if you're going through a hard time, I would help you as much as I can. If you're stealing from me, that means you're willing to drag me down with you. And life is hard enough as it is. Like, I don't need, what does that mean? That if you're in another phase of your life that's difficult, you'll look at everyone else as an opportunity, you know? But that's the thing, like, you can have compassion. So in that situation, I'll have compassion. I'll say, like, I'm around you in the worst point of your life. You are this version of you right now. And I can understand that. So I'm not going to make your life more difficult or rub it in with you or kick you when you're down. But I'm going to recognize that while you are in this phase of your life, you're choosing to be dangerous to me. So I'm not rich. I need my stuff. What are you stealing from me for?
I hear you. But if alright, so Let me put it like this. If somebody does something against you, but it aligns with your moral standpoint, like they haven't done something that's below you morally, I don't know what it could be, but
yeah, it's hard to picture this without an like, what are you talking about?
I'm trying to think of something that you like, something that you would do, but they've done it to you.
It would be really hard for me to hold a grudge if that was the case, because I'd be able to understand it. And although I don't think I've really successfully forgiven anyone, aside from a couple people, I think the way that I've done it, when I have, is through having a lot of compassion for them and their situation, and you know, and having that empathy. Like, if I was in their shoes, would I do the same? You know, and then also having gratitude too, that you are fortunate enough to not be that person, because imagine what it would be like to be them living in that dark space. And until I have experienced their life events and find myself in the same position that they're in, I can't really say too much, you know?
I get that.
It's, you know what, but also, actually, if someone has done something where I've been in the same position as them, in a difficult position, and they've done something that I wouldn't necessarily do, I used to have a hard time forgiving that. Whereas now, I'm really coming to like accept and realize that you cannot compare any two people. Everyone is different. So
that makes sense.
But forgiveness is hard, though. I think what makes forgiveness even harder, actually, for me, is when you know, and this is going to sound weird, but stay with me, but when you know that what they've done was not with bad intention.
Right.
Because I feel like it's easier to kind of let something go or let someone go when you know that they were trying to harm you, because then you can be colder towards it. Whereas when that element isn't there, it's really hard to decide, like, okay, you weren't ill-intentioned, you weren't actually trying to harm me, but I really don't like what happened, and now I just don't know if I want to keep you in my life or not. And then you feel
like
kind of
an accident, you mean? As in an accident. They've done it by mistake, or
kind of by mistake, or even just like the way that they are in certain ways, or I don't know, man. It's really
there's
difficult.
So much, like, I've got a few examples, but before that, I just wanted, you said something. You said about you don't know if you've successfully forgiven anyone. What does that look like to you, to successfully forgive someone? Does that person have to still be in your life for it to be a success? Or
no, definitely not. There's so many people that I'm still struggling to forgive who aren't in my life anymore. But what I mean successfully is, if the thought of them comes up in my head, I'm not still feeling anger or resentment, or like I still want to say something to them, or if I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, if I ran into them, how would it be? Like, how would I want to be? You know? Because even that can be revenge, like revenge through your success. Like, oh, they run into you and you're doing amazingly and they catch you at the right time. You know, it's like, don't you still wish you were in my life? That's still revenge in your own way. Yes. So if those, for me, to forgive someone successfully means that those thoughts aren't really there, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And you wish that they heal and do what they need to do and do well.
I think it's probably easier to forgive somebody that's not in your life, no?
I think it's easier to ignore someone that's not in your life, or to ignore, you know, because they're not affecting your day to day. But, you know, that's the difference. Like, is it just that they're not around and they're not affecting you, or have you actually forgiven them? Because that's the whole point. Like, how do they make you feel when you think of them? That's forgiveness, I think.
It's interesting.
To successfully forgive someone.
It's interesting, because I'm just thinking of things that I don't feel like I've got a lot that's happened in my life where I've needed to forgive people, but there's small things that's happened, not even small, there's been some major things, but some of the things that's happened, like you said, the person had no intention of hurting or causing harm or disruption to my life, but their actions have done those things. And it's like the knock-on effect has a ongoing impact until you manage to arrest that slide or whatever. But I can't be angry at the person because they knew no better in that situation. But it doesn't make it any easier to just get on with it, because sometimes you just sit there and you think, like, within myself, I feel like I've forgiven the person, but there is times where I sit there and think, like, only if. And that burns certain times, that only if.
It does burn. It really, really does. Especially when you know that they didn't know any better. I feel like I tell myself that to soothe myself, but really there's a voice inside me that's like, who cares though? I don't care. And I think that's the first step of forgiveness. It's not about anyone outside of you. It's about you, like, healing the hurt that you feel towards the person.
Yeah.
Maybe even that in itself is forgiveness. Just healing, like, I'm not going to let this hurt me anymore. Like, I'm going to work through that or walk through that. And that in itself can be forgiveness.
It takes a real strength of character to forgive some people, though. Because, like I said, there's some things that I feel is just unforgivable. And I've seen people forgive people for it. And I don't know if that makes them a better person than me, but there's just some things that I just look at and I just don't understand it. Like, forgiving, like I said, it comes with so much trauma sometimes that I understand letting go sometimes is best for you more times than not. But
I think what makes it harder to forgive people also is what you expected out of them and how disappointed you are when they don't fulfill that. I think that makes things difficult for sure.
What about, to flip it? When have you been on the other side of the coin and you're the one that's done something?
I certainly have not been forgiven by some people. And I don't know, there's nothing you can really do about that, you know? Some people just aren't going to be sorry for things. There's things that I'm not really apologetic for, you know?
Can you see the error in your ways, though, for these things? Well,
that's the thing. And that's why forgiveness is so hard as well, because the first person I always look at is me. Like, what could have I done differently? Blah, blah, blah. Where did I go wrong? How did I make that worse? But that can be a tightrope sometimes, because I feel like I can let people off the hook by gaslighting myself or over blaming myself. So that's a whole other conversation. But in terms of like forgiveness for me, it's really hard, because in some instances I've apologized to people and it's been really nice when they're able to forgive me and understand, you know, that I wasn't in the easiest place. And also, as a side note, I think it's definitely easier to forgive other people after you've forgiven yourself. So it really does always start with you first.
Right.
But there have been times where I've apologized to people and they have not accepted the apology at all.
See, in them situations when you've done the apology, do you expect to be forgiven once you've apologized?
Not always.
No.
Not always. It depends, because you just never know how it's going to turn out. And again, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I really do try to keep it all about me as much as I can. So when I apologize to them, I'm doing it because I just really need them to know that I recognize that wasn't okay and I'm sorry about it. And whatever they want to do about that is fine.
But what if, you've apologized, the person's been a bit meh about it, and then they keep bringing it up, but you've apologized, what more can you do? In those situations,
I don't think I've ever been in that situation. No, either they've cut me off and then that just gives me, like, I'm not gonna lie, that really sits on my heart sometimes when I think back to those people, because all I think is, God, I really, really hurt them. And you know what? Maybe thinking about those moments will actually help me forgive others more, to remember that even though it may not feel like it, but when you do hurt someone else, you really do hurt yourself too, you know, and to not just assume that someone else isn't also in pain from causing you some pain, even if they're stubborn about it.
Mm.
But that still doesn't mean that's a green light to put anyone back in your life. That's just like, forgiveness doesn't mean that, but you know, that could help. But that really threw me off on a tangent. What was your question?
The last question or the main question?
The last. What was I saying?
I asked you about my last thing was like when you apologize, do you expect people to accept it? Then I asked something else after that.
Well, that's what I wanted to know.
Oh, what I asked after that? No, I said if you've apologized and they keep going on about it.
Keep bringing it up. I haven't been in that situation before on that side of things. I have been in the situation. I have been that person before.
That somebody's apologized.
Keep bringing it up.
And what do you think what's the driving force behind that when you're doing it?
You just haven't let go of anything. When I do that, it's because I just haven't let go. Like, I'm just still hurt. And it's sad. Like, it's a real counterintuitive place to be, because that person has hurt you. You're feeling so hurt because of them, but they can't soothe you. Like, even if they apologize and you get what you need or whatever, it hasn't really helped me until I've dealt with that hurt bit.
You've not. So basically, you truly haven't forgiven them for what they've done.
Yeah.
So why do you think people act like they've forgiven people and they haven't?
I think they're scared to lose people, you know, or like they don't want anything to change. Or for me personally, like sometimes you remember the earlier days or how things were and you just really want it to be like that. Yeah. Or, you know, you get older and you lose more and more people and you don't want to lose more. All those types of things. But
fear of being alone.
But you have to think, and I haven't been like this in a minute, but you have to think like it's not the same. So you have to look at it as it is. And do you really
like it as it is?
Yeah. And if you don't, it's okay to just kind of let things go. Which is not easy. Like, one thing I'm learning as you kind of get older and move through life a bit more, actually, it's not even about age. Once you commit yourself to constantly changing and growing and evolving and adapting, it is natural for your environment to change with that, and obviously then the people to change with that too. So I'm coming to accept that not everyone is meant to be there forever. Okay. And that helps with forgiveness in theory, because obviously I haven't really done
it. Alright, so let's say you've forgiven someone, and you still want them in your life. How would you, like, what stages would you go through to reintegrate someone back into your life after forgiveness?
Well, I'm kind of doing it a little bit at the moment. So what I would do is firstly take space and trust your intuition. Because if you're like, oh, I need to have a conversation with this person, but something is making you not want to do it, that's your intuition. It might just not be the right time, and that's okay. And I think in that time, it's good to write down. For me, writing is great. Like, that's my thing. But whatever anyone's process is, it's good to think about what it is that you're having to forgive and that you don't like, and what it is you do like about that person. And then think about what you need in order for this dynamic to survive, you know, because clearly something needs to be forgiven. But that's the thing. Like, if you don't want it to be how it is before, you have to put the options in front of a person. Like, look, these are my boundaries. This is what I need. This is what I don't need. And if you don't understand that, if you're taking that too personally, if you can't see that that has actually nothing to do with you and everything to do with me and what I kind of need, then yeah, and then give that person the choice. I think that's what I never really used to do before. Like, when I cut people off, I would just say, yeah, this, I'm done, blah, blah, blah. Instead of having a conversation and airing out, like, this is what I'm not really liking. This is how I feel. Is this something that you can meet me in the middle with? That's something I'm trying to do more now.
Have you ever seen or known of a situation where two people have gone through something and like they've forgiven one another and gone back to how it was before? I don't think I've ever seen that. But there's this fairy tale that things once things are forgiven, it will go back to how it was. But I don't think I've ever seen that in my life.
Nothing goes back to how it was. I don't think that's true because, you know, to have to forgive someone, the step before that is someone has hurt and traumatized you, and that grows you, you know, like it's impossible to stay the same after something has hurt you. You just aren't the same anymore, you know? So how can something be the same?
Do you think it's harder to give... I don't want to... how can I say this without saying it? Basically, there's two situations that I know of, yeah, where two people have gone through something together and there's been a traumatic outcome, right? It was no fault of either party, but both kind of blame each other for it.
Oh, that's a tough situation.
Now, the thing is now, in both situations that I know of, they ended up just splitting and going their separate ways, yeah? For a period of time, they both said that there was like a forgiveness, not towards what happened, but towards their actions and how they was towards each other. Obviously, whatever they went through was causing them to lash out at each other rather than comfort each other, yeah? But like, it's crazy because what they went through is going to stick with each other for life, yeah? Even though these two are like, they're not in each other's lives no more. But in those situations, it's almost like there's no amount of forgiveness that can take away the memory. Like, so sometimes the forgiveness part of it is, I wouldn't say selfish, but it's like, it's for self. Like,
it is for you.
Yeah,
I don't
like,
think you're forgiving anyone for them.
100%, right?
Yeah, I don't think forgiveness has anything to do with the other person, because like we said just a second ago, you can say I forgive you to someone and still not be at peace. I think forgiveness is about you, and that's okay as well, because at the end of the day, you were the one who got hurt, so it should be about you.
True.
And I think that's why it's important to do it. I think another thing that factors in also is just having a huge amount of faith and trust in the fact that everything is how it is meant to be.
Yeah.
So if something traumatic has happened and it has pushed two people apart, I would look at that as that is a very unfortunate thing to happen. And you don't ever have to be okay with certain things happening. Like, there was a period of time where I was forcing myself to be okay with everything that happened because, it's all led me to this point and, you know, it's helped me grow. You don't have to do that. Like, you can be upset that something happened to you forever, you know, or not necessarily upset about it, but you don't ever have to feel okay about it. But you do need to trust that it is done, and it's done what it's needed to do in your life. You know, whether that was to like shake things up or remove people or bring people in or whatever it is, that you have to trust in the fact that there is a silver lining even if you can't see it.
That's difficult though.
It is difficult.
That's like,
because you could always look back and think like, if that thing didn't happen, we would still be together. But maybe you just weren't meant to be. You know,
you needed something to show you.
Because either way, that thing did happen. And that's just a hard fact in your life. And it's not easy. And that's why forgiveness is just not easy. So any tips would be so welcome, because it's not easy to forgive.
All right, let's start with something as small as, not small, but how do you go about forgiving yourself for anything you've done in life?
Well, lately, what I've been doing is zooming out. So looking at it as not me and how my heart feels when I think about the person that I've hurt, but just zoom out and think, okay, who were you at that time? Like, I was a girl in her 20s who had this going on around me, this. I felt like that. Was that really my best time, my best self, my most wisdomous moment and action? And if not, then that's okay, you know? So I think it kind of starts there, like just giving yourself some grace, and also remembering that, like, mistakes are inevitable. Things go wrong all the time.
Yeah.
That's normal, you know?
Yeah.
And it's okay if you made a mistake. And it's okay if your mistake was malicious too. Like, are you still that person? not that I have.
That one threw me off, sorry.
But, you know, sometimes you have to look at the person you were. Like, sometimes you were petty and malicious, you know?
No, we've all been petty at some point in our lives.
Exactly. Like, maybe, you know, like, you just have to accept that. But I do think, and I do stand by, before you forgive anyone else, you do have to start with you. Like, you do have to forgive yourself, because the way that you look at other people is a reflection of how you look at yourself.
Yeah. 100%. Even like its expectations that you have of others is kind of born from what you expect of yourself.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That is so true.
The reason I ask though is because there's some situations where you have a full understanding of why you done what you done. In those situations, it's kind of easier to forgive yourself. But have you ever been in a situation where you've done something and for the life of you don't know why you done it? And it's like it's impacted someone else, but you don't know why you've done it.
What do you mean?
Have you never been in that situation?
I think it's clear you're on your own here, but
okay, cool. No,
I don't know.
I've done stuff. Have I done stuff?
I feel like it's never for no reason, though.
It is for a reason, but you can't work out why you done it.
But not everything is a why. You did something, you know, like sometimes, especially when you're younger, like it's just a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe it's something that you weren't taught how to deal with or react to, you know. Like sometimes all we do have to learn from is our friends, and, you know, and they're not learning from anyone else either. So nothing is ever, even if you don't know specifically why you did it, which I don't believe is entirely true either. I think if you really stop and pause and look at yourself, you'll realize why, like whether that was to save face or, you know.
There's sometimes you can work out why, but the why sounds like an excuse and not a reason.
But that's you being hard on yourself.
Maybe.
And you'll know in yourself, like, I feel like I say this every episode, but like, you know within yourself what the answers are. Like your body will tell you. You'll know when something's just an excuse and when it's a reason. Because when it's a reason, when it's an excuse, I repeat it to myself a lot. Because it's like I'm trying to convince myself. When it's a reason, I only really need to hear that from myself once, and it gives me a sense of relief.
Yeah, that's a fact. I think you're right. I don't know. It's just something. It's one thing in my life that's just like I was really young in it, and that's like my main. Not my main reason behind it, but I was very young, inexperienced. I didn't know no better.
But that is a reason, you know? How are you supposed to learn anything? No wise person who's older was ever wise when they were younger. That's not how you become wise. You start wild and then you get wise. It's true.
But I feel like I've always been wise beyond my years, though. That's why I probably hard on myself. On myself, I should say. Yeah. On that situation in particular. But yeah, I mean, forgiving yourself for things you do is like a learning curve itself. Some of the things you do, like you said, is because you don't know any better at the time or what was going on in your life at the time. Like I said earlier, environment plays a big part.
Some of your reasons might make you feel worse, you know, to admit to yourself that you have that level of shame or this or that to have made you do a particular thing. But it's important to look at that.
Yeah. I guess so. But imagine being somebody that can't forgive themselves for anything.
That's a hard place to be, you know. I've also been in that place. I don't think I'm exactly there anymore. I've forgiven myself for a lot of things. But there was a point where I definitely was not forgiving myself. I was not cutting myself any slack whatsoever. And that is like, no one deserves to be there.
Yeah. So take it away from like doing something to someone else, yeah? Okay. You see, like, if you've told yourself you're going to do something and you haven't done it.
I hate that. But that's when the excuses come in.
Yeah. How do you forgive yourself for not doing things that you tell yourself you're going to do?
I am an expert at this because this is my life. But I just remind myself that I'm trying to do something new and it's going to take a period of time to do that. And that is okay. And you have to give yourself that growing pains, breathing space as well. But you also need to motivate yourself too. You can't just be like, okay, Cam, there's another day every day, because then nothing gets done. So yeah.
It's discipline, right?
Yeah.
Discipline.
It is. It's discipline.
It's tough to discipline sometimes, but that's like the only way you can get things done, I guess.
But you also have to listen to your body and find a middle ground as well. Like the other day, I was just so tired. My eyes were like slits. I couldn't even open them properly. And I was like, why the hell am I so tired? And I was like, okay, it's just going to have to be a bit of a slower day. I'm not going to be able to run through my whole to-do list. So what are the most important things that I need to get done today? And I had no expectation that they were all going to get done. But I just slowly worked through them. And instead of working at my desk, I worked in my garden on a lounge chair.
Then you got it done.
Yeah. And weirdly, I actually got through I think I did everything on my list that day, which isn't like a usual thing for me. So it just goes to show, like, when you are kinder to yourself and like, you can do it, just take your time, go slowly, then you'll get there. Someone told me that you should talk to yourself and others like a small child almost, just with so much care to, you know, and security. And it does work.
I've not tried it.
I've been trying it and it really does work. Just like, you know, you wouldn't shout at, you know, a kid for, well, you do have a stern voice, but you wouldn't shout. But maybe you're just waiting till they get older. But but you know, you shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't shout. You should be encouraging and be like,
you should definitely be that person that and talk to yourself in the same way.
Yeah.
What about like,
it makes a huge difference before we move on. Like actually talking to myself a bit more kindly has just, I've gotten so much. I've started drinking 2 liters of water every day, you know? So
what about when you, because everybody has vices. What about when you you have your moments of weakness and you're not backward and doing something, but you know what I mean?
Those moments are very, very, very hard. And that's that. No, I'm joking. Those moments are very, very, very hard. And if you think about it, like if someone has a vice that they're trying to quit, that they've used for the longest time as a vice and a coping mechanism, that's when you need a friend the most, you know? And you've got to be your friend the most during that time. When you give yourself the love that you need, you won't need to look for it in other places.
Couldn't have said that better. Yeah. No, it's true, because I feel like, you see, with vices and stuff like that, like you said, a lot of the times it is coping mechanisms, yeah, or an escape. But sometimes it's just like, not habits, but sometimes you just need that break from everything, from reality. Almost, it's like a dream world, but being able to snap out of it and snap back on to what you need to focus on, sometimes it can be hard and you can leave you in a dark place. Dark sounds very extreme, like you're doing something.
It's true though.
But you know what I mean. And then picking yourself back up is, I don't think forgiveness, you don't really think about it in those moments. But if you did, and you just forgive yourself for being present in the moment, whatever.
Yeah, just pausing. I'm trying to pause more. Sometimes
you got to be just in the moment. But like I said, I don't think we really look at it to forgive ourselves. We kind of beat ourselves up on it, like, I'm not meant to be doing that. Or the complete opposite, you enjoy it too much and you just continue doing it.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. But I don't know, sometimes looking internally, it's hard to forgive yourself for things that you do. Like, it's very hard sometimes. I'm just thinking about it.
With new things, one thing that I heard recently that's been helping is remembering that, like, when you are deciding to do something, you are undeciding something. And if you want to really be a resilient person, you have to make room to acknowledge everything that you are deciding to no longer, all the things you're undeciding, and you have to mourn that. You have to, because you are giving something up. And with that, obviously comes all the reasons as to why you're giving it up. But with that also comes, all the reasons why you're there in the first place. And that's just not easy. There's so many things in this world that are not easy. And on the media, social media, you see all these success stories and none of the journey, and it makes you, and so many success stories that it makes you think that these things are easy, and they're not. And also, most of these people on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok are in a rented house anyway. They're not even really living the life that they're claiming to live, you know? So you have to be easy on yourself. Also, what's the point of being hard on yourself? Are you really getting results that way? Anyway, I've been hard on myself for years, and in the last 2-3 weeks I've been so easy on myself, and a lot has happened. It's a game changer.
I don't know, man. I don't know, it's very heavy to me, like this forgiveness topic, because it just sits heavy for some reason.
It is heavy. Forgiveness is just not easy.
Because there's just so many situations in life here where you say you've forgiven, but have you really forgiven? And it's almost like you said, it starts within. And there's things that I'm looking at, and I'm just thinking about how easy is it to forgive yourself when you've done something that's crazy. Not crazy, but you know what I mean? Just like against what you would
now.
Yeah, and it's all retrospective looking back, because there's nothing.
But remember
present.
that when you're looking back, you're looking at a different and younger version of you who needs the version of you today to tell that version, what the fuck were you doing? But it's okay, because we're here now. Like, I'm here now. And if you didn't do that thing, I wouldn't have been led down a road that's gotten me to this place today.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. But like I said, it's also that side of it where you might have a vision for how you expected your life to go, or you wanted your life to go, and you haven't stuck to the plan, and you've just gone like a bit wayward here and there. Obviously, life will naturally will give you its own little dips that you have to get over, but there's a level of disappointment in yourself, I think, sometimes. Yeah. For not doing what you know you should or could be doing.
Yeah. To be, it's a heavy feeling when there's potential that you know is untapped in you, and you're like, oh, why haven't I done that yet? That's a tough place to be. But that's, again, where you have to give yourself grace and remind yourself in the areas of life that you believe that you should have been tapping into that potential. Remember what you were doing, and that it's not easy, and where you started and what you came out of, and how not everyone comes out of that, and that's on you, and that's a big thing. And it doesn't matter how many other people have done that too. It was a big thing for you to do that when no one expected you to do that.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
And you have a lifetime to tap into your potential.
You do.
You know what I have been learning that is also quite difficult, that comes with forgiveness, is personal growth.